Welcome to the Contrarians, where we are right and you are wrong. I'm Julio.
And I'm Alex. Here on the show, we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. For the first half of each episode, Contrarians Corner, we trash the fresh red tomatoes and praise the rotten green splotches, making our case any way we can.
The aptly titled Real Talk serves as the second half of each episode. This is where we discuss our true feelings on the movie we're covering. For more information on our podcast and to browse past episodes, you can head over to our website, wearethecontrarians.com.
From there, you can also access our Patreon and merchandise, because capitalism.
If you enjoy our attempts at comedic film discussions, we encourage you to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever podcatcher you use.
If you'd like to reach out to us directly, that's what social media is for. You can find us on most platforms as @ContrarianPrime.
You can also see what we look like if you go to youtube.com/@ContrarianPrime, and you can contact us by email at wearethecontrarians@gmail.com.
I think that covers it.
Then it's time for the podcast. And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for Tommy Boy.
Hello, and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my brother in contrary. I guess, yeah, for the purposes of today, the Richard to my Tommy.
I have to be.
Yeah. I mean, you are the more kind of quick-witted and sarcastic of the bunch. I'm obviously the bigger fella, so kind of works out that way. It'd be pretty cool if Brian Dennehy was my dad.
If Rob Lowe was your stepbrother?
Rob Lowe, who famously not credited in this movie. Did you notice that?
I mean, now that you mention it, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't. Because you told me that he was in the movie, so it wasn't a surprise. But I wasn't looking for his name in the credits. I'll tell you, after I saw Bo Derek in the opening credits, everything else was just... I missed the next 5 minutes of the movie because I didn't know she was in it. Do you know her as Tommy Boy's Bo Derek?
Bo Derek is like a 70s heartthrob, correct?
Yeah. Famously, I know her mainly from, I think the movie's called 10, which is why when Tommy says she's a 10, everybody goes like,
Mm-hmm.
It's the 70s chainsaw.
70s, 80s. I know there's, not quite on the level of Farrah Fawcett, but she does have a famous poster of her running in a bikini that I understand was, or not bikini, but a swimsuit that was...
that might be from 10.
Currency in dorm rooms around the world. Yeah, this would be more 80s. Looks like the early 80s than 70s.
I think Dudley Moore is the guy in that movie. I've never seen it, but I just know it by reputation. Like when I was a kid, it sounded like porn. And obviously, it wasn't. Yeah, 1979, 10, starring Bo Derek and Dudley Moore and Julie Andrews, apparently. Oh, shit. Written and directed by Blake Edwards, Peter Segal's predecessor when it comes to comedy.
Coming soon. What's this ranked at on Rotten Tomatoes?
Dude, Brian Dennehy is in 10. This was a reunion.
There had to be a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge casting done with this, which I always appreciate. But we are here to continue on the summer of bangers, as Julio has dubbed it, and our wonderful walk down memory lane via the MTV Movie Awards. For today's show, we'll be focusing on the 1996 MTV Movie Award winner, Tommy Boy, as we mentioned, and a pretty fascinating movie to cover here today, specifically because I've seen this movie approximately, like if I had to seriously ballpark it, maybe 50 times. And this is Julio's first viewing of it. And it's so strange to me, to the idea of like this not being a centralized part of your adolescence, as I'm pretty sure that any of our American listeners that are in the same age range as me would attest that they sent this in the mail with samples of Tide, and they're, any kid, a 90s kid worth his weight in, Warheads or PlayStation 1 games regularly quoted at least a few lines from this. Returning to the Spade Farley dynamic, the duo, after many moons ago covering Black Sheep, which was not well received by Julio or the critics or the movie, the penny paying public, as that movie was a bit of a bomb and sadly led to what could be construed as a downward spiral for Chris Farley. But he is at the top of his game in this one. No question about that. But before we get into it, 42% on Rotten Tomatoes, looks like, Julio. So a little bit higher than what we typically deal with, but it was too perfect for our summer adventure here, and we just had to throw it in. I'm ready to get to it, but Julio's got some quotes to read to us. I just mentioned 42%. That is comprised of 48 reviews submitted on Rotten Tomatoes. And then I think the real tale of this movie, it's something we're definitely going to talk about in the second half, and we're probably going to talk about throughout the first here. Cards on the table. This was Roger Ebert had this on his most hated movies list. He despised this movie. But you look over to the Popcornometer, based on over 250,000 reviews, this has a 90%.
Your whole generation just logging on reviews on Rotten Tomatoes.
A very beloved film, much different. I could have my sentimental attachments to things like Black Sheep or Beverly Hills Ninja, other Farley works, but this is a legitimately beloved 90s comedy. I would say almost more so than something like Dumb and Dumber. This is at least at the same level. So, that's high praise, because one of the guys who made Dumb and Dumber went on to win an Oscar. Not Pete Segal, though.
One of the guys starring in Tommy Boy went on to be in both Grown Ups movies.
Yeah, he's doing all right.
This is a real winner there. Alex, I think worth pointing out as we head into the quotes that this is our third Chris Farley movie, because we also did Almost Heroes, which was David Spade-less, but they had a Matthew Perry there to be the foil to Chris Farley.
And I ended up that episode really sad.
Yes. Hopefully this one won't be as depressing by the time that we're done. We're going backwards.
You can go and listen to that episode, though. It does have one of my favorite lines of comedic delivery in anything I've ever seen in my life. So there is like one positive from that movie. But when it was over, I was like, man, now I'm sad.
Well, I think that also, just as far as Contrarians continuity, this is your 51st time watching it, but this is not just my first time watching Tommy Boy, but it's my first time watching Tommy Boy after having watched Almost Heroes and Black Sheep and having been thoroughly disappointed by both. So you have to understand that I am coming in here with like very specific expectations. So something weighs heavy on me. On one hand, I know how much you love this movie, and on the other hand, I know how much I disliked the previous two Chris Farley movies I've seen. Regardless, I'm here to argue against the Tomatometer, at least for the first half.
Yeah, we're eventually going to have to also cover Airheads. I think that's like a legitimate 5-star A+ film. It has a 29% on Rotten Tomatoes. Chris Farley has a very small part in that, but of course he's very funny. So that would put us not too far off of having, all of Farley's known films in Contrarians canon. And I just saw that Dirty Work's getting a 4K, so maybe we can, cover that in the not too distant future.
This is all your plan to get us to do Beverly Hills Ninja eventually, and just get Nicolas Sheridan back on the show.
Perhaps. When we were in Vegas at one of the wrestling shows we were at, Lillian was talking to my friend AJ about, they were making a joke about Beverly Hills Ninja, and like this match that was happening was really dead. And Lillian was she was talking like we're talking. She wasn't like being obnoxiously loud or anything, but it was so quiet in there that her conversation could be overheard. And she's like, "Oh God, what was his name in Beverly Hills Ninja?" And like, I think it was 2 rows behind her, this guy goes, "Haru!" Like he yelled forward because he was keeping up with her conversation about it. So maybe one day. But again, we have a big fish to fry in front of us here. A titan of the 90s comedy genre, and all jokes aside, I think a movie that has a much more positive light around it than the other Chris Farley entries that we've covered so far. So 42% means we will be praising it here, as it is a nasty green splotch. And then I don't think it's any secret how I'm going to feel in the second half. But the selling point of this is obviously what Julio walks away with. So Julio, did you pull Ebert's quote or review to kick us off with?
Oh man, I got a D+. I'm going to graduate.
I didn't see it. So, this app, sometimes it just skips the big ones. Do you have it?
I was thinking of saving that for our YouTube video. I thought that would be a talking point there.
That works. We're already going to have plenty of star power here without Ebert crowding us in. So let's start with Philip French from The Observer UK, who says Peter Segal's dismal Tommy Boy is the latest addition to Hollywood's cult of moron. What's a cult of moron? Who else is in this cult? Sandler? Like in the 90s?
Billy Madison would have been before this, yeah. And also, history's definitely written by the winners. I'm not sure how many people really remember how hated and reviled Jim Carrey was.
That's true.
But excuse me, not by the public, but by, and I'm doing the motion of straightening my tie right now. I was going to say film, aficionados and
the
purists.
Just
there you go.
It. Yeah. All right. James Verdinelli from Real Views says Farley is magnetic and charismatic throughout, but most of the rest of the film is simply wretched. So he's very clearly, very pointedly leaving David Spade out of this magnetic and charismatic compliment. Do you think it's possible to watch this movie and like one and not the other? It almost feels like they're together. Like that's the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Like you like Farley, then you kind of have to like Spade. And
the guy that loves Jeff Daniels but hates Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber.
Exactly. Yeah. That's weird. And then we're going to close with Quentin Curtis from The Independent on Sunday, who says, this goes back to what you were saying, Alex. Dumber than Dumb and Dumber. Tommy Boy is a comedy that might be a hoot after several beers, but is otherwise best avoided. Out of those 50-something times that you've watched it, how many times were you sober versus how many times were you intoxicated?
Oh, most of them. I mean, most of the viewings of this was as a kid and a teenager. And then, man, this was a big one for long drives and road trips. My dad drove us around in a big van, a big red van that had like a fucking little TV VCR combo in it. That's the screen on it. There's phones bigger than what the screen was on that. But I remember Tommy Boy was always on rotation in there. It was like that, Cats Don't Dance, Aladdin. But yeah, Tommy Boy was a big one on road trips. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously a movie I watched in college a lot. Not as much as, we're talking about movies from my childhood that I've watched intoxicated in some capacity. I think Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2 would be higher on the view count.
All I can think of is as you were talking about this movie playing in the back of your car as your dad's driving you. And then I'm thinking the longer you go on the road trip, the more the car starts falling apart. And so by the time the Tommy Boy is over, you're missing the roof, you're missing one of the doors.
That did traumatize me as a kid. I've driven my entire life since then, my entire driving life, always worried that the hood's going to fly open. So anytime I have to work under the hood, I like make sure I slam it hard and then do a few tests, like make sure it's good and locked in.
Make sure you didn't leave anything under the hood.
Yes, the fucking can of oil.
All right. Well, those were the quotes, Alex. Let's go into Contrarians Corner.
They're a little bit different style of note taking for this one, and I'll explain more once we get to real talk.
It's just like little hearts everywhere.
So just gonna be flying off the top of my head for a lot of this because, man, I page and verse this one. After 7 years at college, friendly, dim-witted Tommy Callahan III barely graduates from Marquette University and returns to his hometown of Sandusky, Ohio. His father, widowed industrialist Thomas R. Big Cat Tom. Sorry, he's not Big Cat. I know Tom Big Cat. His father, widowed industrialist Thomas R. Big Tom Callahan Jr., gives him an executive job at the family auto parts plant, Callahan Auto, and reveals he will marry Beverly Barish Burns, whom he had met at a fat farm with her son Paul, effectively becoming Tommy's new stepbrother. So, a lot to unpack here. This movie starts with Chris Farley in college. Well, it starts with Chris Farley as a little kid, running to school and seeing that not much has changed into his young adult life. Now, nothing to do with this movie, Julio, but this is a real question. Did you ever, watching movies, thought it would never happen to me. Have you ever had the having to run across campus because you're late for a test scenario?
No, but that's, man, did I ever run anywhere? I'm trying to think, because I was going to say, the campuses here in America, they're expansive. They're like cities. When I went to school in Peru, it was just like you would get from one end to the other in like 5 minutes. It was like there was no way there was no way to build up to being dramatic about it. It was like, oh, suddenly I'm already in the cafeteria. So, but I'll tell you what, I had to. This is not as exciting, but I've had to take cabs instead of taking the bus because I was running late. So the frenetic like taxi. That
yes. Part. Raining. You got your fucking like overcoat on with the newspaper over your head. I'm basically just painting like I'm seeing you as Steve Martin in Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, exactly. Late for an exam.
So my asshole like takes my cab, and then I have to. Yeah,
that happened to me one time. I literally, and I was younger and in better shape, but I was like Tommy here. I got there and grabbed my blue book and was just fucking blown up, breathing in my seat. I passed though. Yeah,
well, this Alex, this enhanced the opening in a way that I wouldn't have experienced if we were not doing the show together and we hadn't done it for so long. Because when Tommy starts celebrating that he passed with a D+, I'm like, that's Alex's thing. That's my co-host joke.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've referenced the D+ like Tommy Boy so many times, and I got the warms and fuzzies. I was like, hey.
Oh my God.
I've never seen this movie before, but this feels familiar. I like it.
Passed. Yes, I think I've told this story in here before. My senior year of college, I had an elective. It was like a health communications course. And at UNT, I don't know what all universities do this or if they still do. For your last year, the last 2 semesters, your electives you could take as pass-fail. And I was in this group project in that class that tanked, and so I still I got a pass because my last assignment I got like an A on, but it was like right on the line of pass fail, so I didn't actually get a D+, but it felt like that in that moment. And I can't remember the name of the hall I was in, but I was in one of the community like they just had like a little bank of computers you could check your email at. And so I did that, and it was like fucking 6 or 7 in the evening, so it had cleared out, and so there was no one in the hallway, but I did yell out loud, I got a D+, I'm gonna graduate.
That makes it even better that you just committed to the bit even though there was no audience.
Graduate. A lot of people go to college for 7 years. I know, they're called doctors. It took me 5 years to graduate, and you better believe I got that line from some of my family. But this is time to call out Sandusky, Ohio, a real place, not quite as destitute as this movie would paint it out to be. There are plenty of towns in Ohio like this, though, like there are all over the Midwest, towns that rely on auto shops or factories to keep basically the town in motion. Sandusky, Ohio is most famous for being the home of Cedar Point, which is one of the most famous amusement parks in the world. It's not like
Alex, I don't know if you've heard, but we're bringing production back to America. It's pretty soon when you watch Tommy Boy, you're going to be like, what is this? This is like the old ages when factories were closing. We're about to experience a production boom, but I get it. I mean, this is a good capsule of what it was like in the 90s.
Wonder how Ray Zelinsky would have dealt with tariffs, who's to say. Cedar Point is not like Disney World per se, where there's a lot of like look at me stuff. It's mainly roller coasters. It was a big attraction. When I grew up in Ohio, we would take school field trips there, or, that's the big thing you would work in the summer up for. So, one of the parents would take you and your buddies there. I haven't been there in well over 20 years since, I moved away to Texas, but I remember the Millennium Force was when I left. That was the big roller coaster. And I think it went like 350 feet. Like that was the height that dropped. It was pretty crazy. Beverly, played by Bo Derek, and her son Paul, played by the aforementioned uncredited Rob Lowe. If you're wondering why wasn't he credited, just stick around. We'll cover that later.
Oh, okay. So there's a story.
Not much of one. It's just fucking Hollywood litigation and whatnot.
Oh, what was it? Terrible Bogdanovich movie that we did with him in it? Illegal Yours?
Illegal Yours. I was going to say, obviously yours.
Might as well. But he seems a lot happier, a lot more comfortable in this movie.
Did you eat a lot of paint chips when you were a kid?
Why?
However, Big Tom suddenly suffers a fatal heart attack during the wedding reception. After the funeral, doubting the company will survive without Big Tom, the bank reneges on promises of a loan for a new brake pad division. requiring that the company's debts be resolved immediately. Tommy suggests that he will let the bank hold his few inherited shares in house in exchange for the bank giving time to sell 500,000 brake pads to prove the new division's viability. If he succeeds, the bank will underwrite the venture. Tommy then sets out on a cross-country sales trip with Big Tom's sardonic and sycophantic assistant, Richard Hayden, a childhood acquaintance who is particularly antagonistic towards Tommy. One of Brian Dennehy, Big Tom's right-hand man in this.
Uh-huh.
I knew his name, and I refused to look it up until it came to me, so I just yelled out in the middle of the movie, Zach Grainer, that's his name.
It's the boss from Fight Club, right?
He is the boss from Fight Club. And I want to say we've covered a movie he's been in before elsewhere.
We have to, because I know we've had this conversation before.
Okay, he's in Swordfish.
Okay.
And we didn't do Rise of Silver Surfer, but he was in that.
You see the Silver Surfer?
Yes. And I mean, good Lord, we've talked about Zodiac a ton, and he's in that as well.
He's a Fincher guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Brian Dennehy, I don't want to skip over his, 10, 15 minutes.
Unfortunately, as soon as he's here, he's gone. But yeah, he has a lasting impact.
Definitely. I mean, I think that the one initial, there are two things that Tommy Boy has going for it just from the beginning. One is the David Spade, Chris Farley dynamic, which even from what I remember of Black Sheep, I mean, that was a positive, right? Like, even if the movie was crumbling around them, you still had these two people that knew how to work together and obviously had a good chemistry, a good rapport when it came to comedy. And then the thing that I was not expecting was the heart. I didn't think that this movie was going to be about something, and that it was going to give us a pretty emotive, I guess, representation of a father-son relationship. Like, I was surprised when Brian Dennehy shows up as the dad, and he actually very clearly loves his son. I thought that it was going to be, he's tired of Tommy. Like, Tommy's a loser. He comes back home and his father's like, I guess I have to give you a job or something. But no, it's the complete opposite, right? He comes in, he hugs him, he's fucking around with him. They have their inside jokes, and he's just excited to have his son back. So it's actually heartbreaking when he dies. I did not see that coming. I didn't know anything about this movie other than it was Chris Farley and David Spade doing funny things. So, like, in the back of my head, I know there were a couple of times where I thought, man, they're selling him as such a cool guy that in a regular movie, he would probably die. And then he died, man, in the middle of a musical number, of all things.
A big choreographed number with him and his son. And then they do the shot that, whoever thought of this first in like a college film and maybe even like a high school film project where everyone bows their head and, you see the shot from underneath. And then when they come back up, they're at a different venue.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder who did that first. And I wonder how fucking bricked up they were, like, editing it later. Like,
okay, well, that has nothing. That transition is good, but it has nothing on the transition from child Farley to adult Farley. Because that was like the transition in 2001, A Space Odyssey, when the monkey throws a bone and then it becomes a satellite. Like, there's what is it? Is it like a car that drives by and then there's like smoke?
Yeah, the bus drives by and leaves like a big smoke trail behind, and the smoke clears and he's adult Farley.
So it's like 20 years later. It's pretty amazing. So Peter Segal, I mean, how many movies did he have under his belt by now?
This was his second one.
Still trying to impress.
He's earning his keep at this point.
Yeah. What do you think of, I know we're going to be talking about the music as we go through this movie, because it's a road trip movie. So, of course, the soundtrack is a big thing. But were you familiar with the song that they sing? The Dennehy and Farley, father and son duo?
Oh, yeah. Baby girl with the diamond ring. He knows how to twist that thing. Oh, whoa.
Okay. I wasn't. So I was like, is this an original? Written exclusively for Tommy Boy.
Never tell me what I say. That's a Ray Charles song, man. Come on.
Okay.
Get with it, brother.
It's a Tommy Boy song for me.
Losing points, man.
I like it. It's such a happy moment. Even David Spade, who's always too cool to have fun in this movie, even he is kind of jamming and bobbing his head and playing with the camera while they're performing. So you don't see it coming off. I mean, obviously you did because you've seen this movie so many times, but does it still happen? Does it still surprise you or bum you out when it happens? When then he collapses?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, you never get used to it.
No, it never gets any easier.
Dad? Somebody call 911!
Meanwhile, sales manager Michelle Brock, a high school classmate of Tommy's, notices Beverly and Paul kissing romantically. They reveal themselves as married con artists with criminal records. Instead of eventually suing for divorce and taking half of Big Tom's estate, Beverly has inherited a controlling interest in the company. To convert that into cash, she seeks a quick sale to self-described auto parts king Ray Zielinski, owner and operator of rival automotive parts company Zielinski's Auto Parts in Chicago. And to let you know that it's in Chicago, Dan Aykroyd speaks in a Chicago accent that people in Namibia could say, oh, that guy's from Chicago.
Okay, so that's what he's doing. I knew he was doing an accent, but I wasn't sure if that was just him being quirky or if it was an actual accent that he was going for. Either way, it's
oh no. God, I love that. Yeah, that's very Chicago. You know, I've learned in recent years that the Pennsylvanian accent is the hardest to copy. Tina Fey is very good at it, but yeah, you could do a pretty good Midwest one easily. And, you know, that's Dan Aykroyd's bread and butter. So he of course nails it.
Is he the biggest name in this movie?
From what perspective?
The biggest star, right? He's a Ghostbuster. He's named after a Ghostbuster in this movie. He was Ray in Ghostbusters. He's Ray here. Is that like a big get?
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's also, you know, this is one of it's not an SNL skit, but this is basically, you know, Lorne financed this movie, and it's viewed in the ilk of all of the SNL releases, so it shouldn't really be a surprise he gets there. And before anyone misconstrues what I say, because I did get called on the Cedar Point thing, Dan Aykroyd is famously Canadian, but his first big comedy break was in the Second City. He also directed and wrote a film that we've covered not too long ago.
So don't think that we are just...
Well, I was about to say, do you like Dan Aykroyd more in this than you do in Nothing But Trouble?
I admire what he does in Nothing But Trouble a lot more than what he does here. This is just him. You know, he can do this with his eyes closed. It works. But come on.
He has a moment, and we're going to get to that in just a moment here. And I do still remember the jingle. Come on down to Zielinski's, the Auto Parts King.
Right. Okay, he has a collection of moments in Nothing But Trouble. And a penis nose.
That movie is a collection of moments, and Tupac.
Yes.
On the road, Tommy's social anxiety and hyperactivity alienate several potential buyers. The lack of any progress leads to tension between Tommy and Richard, culminating in a near destruction of Richard's car and a fistfight. However, after witnessing Tommy persuade a surly waitress to serve him in a restaurant after the kitchen is closed, Richard suggests that he use his skill at reading people to make sales. To reconcile and quickly reach their sales goal. So we get a fair amount of montages in this, and the first one of which, when they hit the road, is all the rejection that Tommy gets. And Julio, you and I are both adults who have dealt with our fair share of salesmen in our time. And if one like Chris Farley approached me, I think I kind of might be like these guys of like, no, thank you.
Wouldn't you think, hey, he's like Tommy, I'll give him a shot.
That's the whole skill, is figuring out how to connect to who you're talking to. And the way most salespeople are trained these days are just to go to like base level and prey on lowest common denominator. But we're going to deal in an industry like this of like high dollar amounts and, ins and trying to keep business. He gets his one big maybe, and then he turns it into the Chris Farley show.
Yeah.
Where this gentleman has cars on his desk, to, like models. And I mean, anyone who's seen the movie knows exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. You're driving along. Your kids in the back seat say, I got to go to the bathroom, Daddy. Not now, damn it. And acts out this whole scenario, and filled with lines that I regularly quote, including Medic gets out and says, oh my God. So Julio, this is where it kicks in. New guy's in the corner puking his guts out, all because you want to save a couple extra pennies. This guy kicks him out on the way out. Did you catch Farley reaches into his coat pocket and goes, do you validate?
Oh, yeah. I did.
But Julio, this is, I think, safely. We get some pratfalls and some, hyperactive movement. We see him run into a wall. But I think this is the first time this becomes the Chris Farley show in this movie, this scene here. As we know, some of the stuff he's done in the past hasn't worked for you. So when we get here and this scene's over, how are you feeling at this point in the movie? Are you more optimistic than you were, 20 minutes into Black Sheep?
Yes. I had some trepidation, right? Because it became clear that there was one. By then he was gone. So the heart was gone. And then Rob Lowe and Bo Derek were left behind in Ohio, right? So the bad guys are gone. And then, yes, it's the Chris Farley show, and the show is on the road. So I was afraid that was what was going to happen for the next 90 minutes or so, that it was just going to be Chris Farley doing pratfalls. What gave me a little bit of hope was that I thought that David Spade hit the ground running from the first scene he had. And so I'm like, okay, if they can keep up with each other, the balance is going to be all right. And then what really ultimately pushes over the line to, oh, this is good, is that the movie wisely puts supporting characters throughout their journey that are pretty memorable. Example, the map guy in, I don't know,
yes,
one of their stops here that gets
outside
into it
Des Moines.
with Spade. Okay, yes, yeah. That guy, early candidate for the Embry, maybe. He does so much with so little, barely has like 5 lines, but he has so much attitude. He puts David Spade in his place so easily. And Spade's reaction is pretty funny. And all this is while Chris Farley's destroying the car in the background. So,
yes,
that's what you need to make this work, at least for someone like me, right? I can't just live off Chris Farley falling on his face or screaming. But if you have that combined with stuff that's a little more witty, a little more cerebral, dare I say, then that works so much better.
That exchange is so good when Spade's like, okay, so you're telling me it's not on my map and you're really smart. So, and the guy's just reading his book and then he finally puts the book down. You're in the wrong state. Get yourself a new map. And yes, this is during one of the hijinks on the road. Farley accidentally backs up Spade's car while the driver door is still open, and it runs into like a parking barrier and snaps it forward, and he gets it back in place. But when Spade comes to open the door, rips the entire thing off, to which Farley greets him with, "What'd you do?" Which I think outside of Holy Shnikes might be the line that most people would think of when they think of Tommy Boy.
Oh, really? It's not that's going to leave a mark?
Yeah. Son of a, his little mannerisms. But I attended a Draft House quote along of this maybe 10 years ago. And I remember that the "what'd you do" was one of the lines that brought the theater down. What'd you do?
It's a good punchline because the way it works, Spade is like cleaning something off the door.
Yeah, he like takes it, he pulls his sleeve up a little higher, tries to like wipe it off, and then the whole fucking door falls off.
What'd you do?
Paul sabotages the company's computers, causing sales posted by Michelle to either be lost or rerouted. With half of the sales now canceled, the bank, backed by Beverly and Paul, decides to sell Callahan Auto to Zielinski. So we are kind of hopping around a little bit here with our plot synopsis that we have in front of us. But while these things are running kind of parallel to each other, as Tommy and Richard are on the road, we mentioned they do get into a fist fight, and it produces, again, one of the more famed and possibly most replicated or made homage to scenes in this movie when they're at the diner, where Farley says, "Do I have a mark on my face? Really hurts. Right here. Not here or here so much, but right here." I have been around people that have nailed that reference when injured, and there's really nothing sweeter than successfully pulling that off. There's a friend of mine I had in high school named Tony, who I used to record his skateboarding, and so we could make like a demo reel for him or some shit. And I remember one time he bailed really hard on his elbow, and like his fucking elbow, like on the bone, was like bleeding. And he like walked up to me, and he was like, he just pulled that off. He's like, "It really hurts right here, not here or here so much, but right here."
How sad is it when the person doesn't get the reference?
Well, that's their fault. That's their loss. I'm not going to test it on the fine folks of Peru. I'll tell you that, because I don't know who has and hasn't seen it.
Alex, let's talk before we move it even further down the story. we need to talk about Michelle because she is the love interest.
Ah, yes. She is the love interest. Julie Warno.
Not Janine Garofalo, but close.
Not Janine Garofalo, Julie Warner.
Do you know her from anything?
No.
I guess Tommy Boy. I was surprised to find out that she's in Doc Hollywood, which is a movie I might have seen when I was much, much younger. I don't remember her, but I guess she is the main love interest there. So to you, when you see her, you're just like, she's Michelle from Tommy Boy.
If I do see her, I'm looking over and I don't know if I would have seen her in anything else. Oh, she's in Flatliners. There you go.
Man.
She was on an episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation. She played Christy Henshaw in 2 episodes, excuse me.
Oh,
and,
part of the crew.
That's what I remember her from. She's in an episode of Scrubs. I have seen her in something else because I remember watching that going, hey, it's Michelle from Tommy Boy.
This is a very sweet love story, a very sweet romantic subplot. There's very little drama in it. They like each other from the start. They support each other from the start. She has a pretty badass moment where she defends his honor after he's failing to defend hers. I liked her. I mean, there's 2 ways usually. The 2 main ways in which you can have this type of subplot in a comedy, right? Either she doesn't really care for him, and so he has to win her over, or like we see here, she likes him from the start, and now it's just a matter of her being funny while he's doing something else, which is what she does here. You mentioned that Rob Lowe sabotages her computer, and that was one of my biggest laughs in the movie when he's trying to be cool and not be suspicious while he's in her office, and he accidentally sits on one of those tubes that sucks up the
bank tube.
Yeah, the bag tube, and ends up ripping off his shirt.
He's looking pretty good, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, I knew that there was like, I could tell what was happening, but I didn't know what the punchline was gonna be. I was like, where does this lead? And suddenly his shirt disappears. And he's like, I gotta go.
It's really good too, because like while he's sitting there, it keeps getting tighter, and the sounds are like,
yep,
like you just hear it getting worse and worse.
So I guess what I'm saying is, like, she's not one of those love interests that sometimes stress you out because you're like, oh, here comes another fight. But she's also not a love interest that slows things down, and where the movie is so about the romance and not about the comedy anymore. Because I think that almost every scene she has, there's something funny going on. So I liked her. I mean, all kidding aside, if you happen to peak with Tommy Boy, that's fine. I think that there are much worse fates for an acting career.
My sister actually brought that up while we were watching it. She's like, I never really saw her in much else. Is like, man, movies like this in the 90s, the royalties got to be fucking sweet when there's all those home video releases. And still, like, this movie, I think it just recently got like a 4K. Not quite, Kate Winslet walking to the mailbox every 3 days and having a check in there for just, $700,000 because Titanic played 900 times over the weekend. But
just wait for the Criterion, the Tommy Boy Criterion with the cover that's just the Sandusky streets.
No, it's a pack of spilled peanut M&Ms. That's the Criterion cover. We mentioned that Tommy and Richard hit their sales goals, so they're riding high now. And this is where we get the big road trip musical montage of the film. At this point, also, the car, Julio, the roof of it is like a tarp that they pulled over. And at one point, they have like a child barricade as the
like
door. Yeah, that's kind of like a reoccurring joke in the movie, Julio, where you don't see them actually working on the car, but every time there's a new shot of the car, there's some new adjustment to it in a very cheap way, I guess you would say.
Yep.
Which, of course, the biggest punchline to that is at one point, I guess there's like a leaf or a speck of dirt on the tarp, and David Spade goes over and rubs it off with his sleeve like he's proud of his car once again. But yeah, they're flying high. The musical montage consists of Dexy's Midnight Runners Come on Eileen. They have It's the End of the World, as we know it, by REM, and then Eres Tu by Mocidades.
That's the funniest part, right? The Spanish.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because earlier in the movie also they're kind of fiddling and arguing over the radio, which we get another kind of famous 90s scene in which they settle on the Carpenters And then, they're down, it shows them a little bit further down the road and they're both crying, singing along to it. But here they're like singing these songs together and everyone knows Come On Eileen. And then it's the joke about it's the end of the world where they know like the chorus, but then when they try to kick into the verse, they just quickly like fall off the tracks. But yeah, that's the funniest part. As a fucking 9-year-old kid, the first time I saw this movie, I had no reason at all to understand what this song was. But yeah, it's funny then when you're a kid, because they're singing Spanish all of a sudden. And then as an adult, it's even funnier because it's such an obscure song that I really want to know like who threw that in. It's like, it'll be funny if we do this, because that's still like my taste in humor. If that, you get these two songs everyone knows and then they're singing Spanish perfectly together and they literally are driving off into the sunset. As
a Peruvian kid, there would have been an extra layer because I actually know most of that is as like a music that my parents, I guess, listened to. It's like, holy shit, I know that song. It took me a moment to figure out like what it was, but I recognized the melody as soon as they started singing. It was amazing. I don't want to finish this leg of the road trip, Alex, without discussing I guess this could be one of those things that could make or break the movie. And the fact that it doesn't break it, I guess kudos to David Spade and Peter Segal for directing it, which is the moment in which David Spade starts peeping on some girl that decides to jump in the pool naked. And I guess he's jerking off, and then Chris Farley interrupts him. It's like a whole sequence. They let David Spade shine with the creepiness. Does that put you off when you watch it today, or are you still like, yeah, this is funny to get to see the sexual side of this dude that has been pretty uptight so far?
Well, the funniest part is when Farley comes in and he scrambles to get back into bed, and then Farley begins making some incredible, jacking off puns. The best of which, instead of Buddy Hackett, he asks if he was watching Buddy Wackett, and then proffers that maybe she goes out with one of the Yankees. That's a pretty girl down there. And then we fade to, it's the middle of the night and he's in bed and he asks, who's your favorite little rascal? Is it Alfalfa or Spanky? And then you see David Spade just slowly like covering his face in embarrassment. As you would and should do if you ever catch, like you're in a hotel room with your bro and you catch him like jacking off because he thinks you're gone. You should give him shit.
There's talent in pulling this off, because this movie, for all its crude jokes from time to time and how over the top it can be, so brash, it doesn't really paint its characters as sexual beings. And this happens so late in the movie that I remember when it started, I was like, oh my God, he's actually going to jerk off. And I just remember thinking, man, if they need to tread carefully. If they went as far as like, let's say somebody like the Farley brothers, right? They always like to push the joke like as far as it can go. Of course, their movies are, this is what, PG-13?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Farley's usually go a little harder than that, but
which is kind of surprising. I know a couple years after this, it would become a big point of contention because there's like shots of them smoking weed in this. I know that became for a little while like a media R rating material.
Not in 95. So yeah, that was honestly the funniest part for me though was before that when because Tommy goes to get a pizza, so he has to walk past the pool.
Know where the weight room is?
Yeah, he's like, "Don't do the weight room thing." He does it. That made me laugh. But anyway, David Spade, sexual being. I guess it had to happen in a movie.
So they go back. Tommy learns of everything that's gone wrong. Him and Michelle get into a fight about it because he thinks it's her fault. He then hatches the idea that they're going to go to Chicago to persuade Zelensky that don't do it. Naturally, all the flights are sold out. And so Tommy and Richard board a plane to Chicago posing as flight attendants. And we get another kind of Chris Farley show here with the physical comedy where Farley's doing the instructions, the pre-flight instructions, and he grabs a child's life preserver instead of an adult. So, of course, nearly squeezes his head off. That's just a preamble, though, to him trying to change into a suit in the airplane bathroom, which features an overhead shot of him. They didn't tell him. There's no chance they told him what to do. They're just like, all right, fumble around in there. Because there's one point where he just like falls to the ground and gets stuck. It's tremendous.
You don't think this was perfectly, very carefully choreographed?
This was not the Ray Charles dance number. No, sir.
Okay, and life preservers. These we may need. Although, what are the odds of us actually hitting a lake? My money says, if anything, it's gonna be a mountain. To inflate, put it around your neck and yank down on the tab.
In Chicago, they briefly meet with Zelensky, but he tells them he desires the reputation connected with the Callahan brand, planning to shut down the company and lay off the workers, which in turn would financially ruin Sandusky. Now, I mentioned that Dan Aykroyd has a moment in this movie. This is Dan Aykroyd's moment.
Oh, okay. So we have two different moments for Dan Aykroyd, because mine comes later.
In a possible contender for his best supporting actor clip, where he's walking through his testing facility for, the different auto parts that he buys and provides. And he's essentially explaining to Tommy and Richard capitalism, but at a very high level of like, listen, I don't give a shit about you or these workers. I want the name so people will think that I support the company. And then I take your parts. A young Paul Thomas Anderson was watching this and he was sipping a milkshake in the movie theater while this was happening. And he was like, hold on a minute. I think I got an idea here. But it concludes with Chris Farley saying to Dan Aykroyd, you seem so much more genuine and nice in your commercials. And Dan Aykroyd says, what the American public doesn't know is what makes them the American public. And that is too real a line for a movie like Tommy Boy, but it was me just pointing at the screen going, dude's preaching right now, man. Zelensky saw the future. Yeah.
All the way from 95 to 2025.
During all this, though, and it's understandable if you would forget, his monologue here being so powerful, because during all this, we get the most random and arguably funniest punchline in the entire movie, in which it's revealed that Richard's bald and wears a wig as they're testing like an engine that blows his whole wig off. And to me, the reveal that he's bald isn't even half as funny as when they cut back to him and his wig is not settled down on top of his bald head. And he's just telling Farley, he tells Tommy, if you tell anyone, I will kill you. And Tommy goes, it looks good. And then they, just cut to whatever the next scene is.
Yeah, that is so random. I guess the makeup is so good that honestly, and I was so into the movie that, not gonna lie, for about half a second, it made me wonder, is Spade really bald? Is this just the big reveal? But then I remember now, I've seen him later in life, and he seems to be a hairy dude. So this is great. I will get to my favorite Dan Aykroyd moment in a little bit, but the idea that this is a guy that plays nice on TV and then is a complete asshole in person, and that actually leads to how they defeat him in a way. I mean, I think that's pretty smart. This movie sets that up really early in the story when we see the commercial, and then, which honestly, because Aykroyd had gotten like the Dan Aykroyd credit, I didn't think that he was going to be in the movie much. So I thought maybe we were only going to see him in commercials. When he actually shows up for the third act, I was pretty happy. Now here in Chicago is where they get probably my biggest laugh in the movie, Alex. And that is the thing with the bank, at the bank, when people think that Tommy is about to rob the bank.
Listen up, this'll only take a second. It's a hold up! Does anybody?
This'll only take a second.
Yes. Not one, but two guns slide over to his feet.
No one hesitates. Everyone just hits the deck when he says that.
So are they saying something about Chicago as a city? Just the frequency with which bank robberies happen? Or
I think they're just saying it's a little bit different than Sandusky, Ohio.
The big city.
Tommy and Richard are denied entrance to the Zelensky boardroom since Tommy has no standing. As they wallow on the curb in self-pity, another incredible punchline in this. They're sitting there and everything's gone wrong. And then the bench breaks because Tommy's so fat. And he just goes, could have done without that. Michelle arrives quickly with Paul and Beverly's police records. Tommy devises a plan, dressed as a suicide bomber by using road flares. He attracts the attention of a live television news crew, and along with Michelle and Richard, forces his way back into the boardroom. Back in Sandusky, Callahan workers watch the drama on television. In a final move of pure persuasion, Tommy quotes Zelensky's own advertising slogan, claiming that he stands for the American working man. As the television audience watches, Zelensky signs Tommy's purchase order for over 500,000 brake pads, although Zelensky nullifies the purchase order as he will soon own Callahan Auto. Michelle arrives with Paul's police records, which include outstanding warrants for fraud. Since Beverly is still married to Paul, her marriage to Big Tom was null and void, never legal. Thus, all of Big Tom's controlling shares actually belong to Tommy, the rightful heir. Since Tommy does not want to sell the shares, the deal with Zelensky is off. And since Tommy still holds Zelensky's purchase order, the company is saved. Rob Lowe then attempts to flee, but actually triggers a crash test mechanism that subdues him and is subsequently arrested. Now, that's not just what happens. He falls on the hood of this car that's going to run into a brick wall, and in like delivery only Rob Lowe can really have, he just looks and goes, not good. And they hit the brakes on it before it kills him, but then he flies and lands in the seat they're testing with like this big weight for impact. And of course, it hits him in the nuts, Julio, because we've been this long into a 90s comedy and no one got hit in the dick.
Thus, setting up my favorite Dan Aykroyd moment. Because
do tell.
Yeah, because now that Rob Lowe is out of the picture, there had been some flirtation with Bo Derek, and so Bo Derek settles up to him, and he basically, it's a walk and talk, him and Derek, and he's just giving instructions to his people, basically telling them, and I wish I watched this movie 50 times so I could tell you the dialogue exactly how it goes, but he's basically telling them, go get Rob Lowe, find out where the cops are taking him, give him a pack of ice for his balls, and give him a bottle of champagne on me, and tell him that it sucks, but sometimes that's how it plays. I don't know. He just delivers it with that clippy, like 30s comedy dialogue, that rhythm. He walks off screen with Bo Derek. It's just, he doesn't think that he lost. Like, he was kind of like the bad guy, but he just walks away. He's happy. Well, he even, like, before this, even congratulates Tommy, I think, on a hand well played. It's such a baller exit for him.
He does tell Tommy, he's like, you got one by me, relish it, because it's never going to happen again.
Yes. Yeah. This is enjoy the taste.
That's it. Yes.
Great work here from the former race stance, now an automotive mogul.
Zelensky admits defeat, honoring the sales order, and invites Beverly to dinner. Back in Sandusky, Tommy gives a speech at the plant saying he will take his presidency of Callahan Auto seriously to keep the workers steadily employed. And he talks about how he's family with everybody. And RT, I lost my virginity to your daughter, for crying out loud. This guy gets all serious, and the guy sitting next to him goes, Rob, you were there. Sailing in his dinghy on a lake, Tommy talks to his father's spirit and tells him that he'll continue his legacy at Callahan, but says he must go ashore to have dinner with Michelle and her family.
It's the Forrest Gump talking to Jenny moment.
He's ignited a relationship with her, as it says here, and a very touching ending. The wind picks up then and carries Tommy over to shore. And then, just to tie it up in a perfect fashion, we get the end title card. We're taken away in a quick and tight, I believe it's 1:37.
With credits.
With credits, yes, thank you. Not really sure what you could have done to improve on this this little piece of business here.
I mean, there's a scene where they run over deer, and I was going to say maybe that one, but no, because that leads to the really funny moment where the deer comes back to life and destroys a car.
Which also produces an incredible moment of Chris Farley telling David Spade, I've seen a lot of things in my life, but that was awesome. Sorry about your car, man. That sucks. Well, Julio, we've reached the end of Contrarians Corner. Genuinely curious to see how you feel about this. So
let's turn Mosdaitis on.
Yes, and with what we have left of this car, let's drive over to Real Talk.
Una mañana